Next is Rififi by Jules Dassin. Now, before he made this movie, Jules Dassin also made, The Naked City and Night in the City and Thieves Highway. But then he got blacklisted. It was in the early 1950s. During the McCartney era. Senator Joseph McCartney had a witch hunt, as they call it. He put a lot of filmmakers, film directors, producers, screenwriters on the blacklist, who were accused of being a member of the Communist Party, and Jules Dassin was one of them. And after he got blacklisted, he went to Europe and started making movies there. And this was his first film, Rififi. It has a heist scene in it, a very classic, a very great heist scene, which is a little over a half hour, with no dialogue and no music at all. It's really a great film that really slowly builds up the tension. And actually, Brian De Palma was clearly inspired by that scene, because he did a similar scene in Mission Impossible, the first one. But this is a great film, great scene, great film, Rififi, and a great director too, Jules Dassin. Next is a 1950s science fiction classics, Robinson Crusoe on Mars by Byron Haskin. I haven't seen it yet. Here is RoboCop by Paul Verhoeven. This is the unrated director's cut. Next is The Rock, the other Michael Bay movie that was released by Criterion. The other one was, of course, Armageddon. And if you ask me, this is still Michael Bay's best film to date. Here's another Melville, Le Samurai, with Alain Delon. Next is the special edition version of Seven Samurai by Kurosawa. And this is a true masterpiece. Great film. Next is a Russian science fiction film, Solaris. Now, I've seen this movie last year, and I thought it was great. Now, this is not everyone's cup of tea, because it's a very long film. It's almost 3 hours, and it's also very slow. And I don't think there's a lot of you out there who might have the patience to look, to watch a movie like this. If you thought the George Clooney remake was slow and long, then you should skip this one, because this is even slower and longer. But like I said before, I saw it last year and I thought it was great. I saw this movie, 3 hours straight, without getting bored. Wonderful science fiction classic. And besides, there's no aliens or robots or something like that. It does take place in another world, but it's very, what do you call this again? Very artful. It's a very artful film. But I thought it was wonderful. Solaris. Next is Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus, which is a great epic film with Kirk Douglas and Gene Simmons. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, with one of my favorite British actors, Richard Burton. Straw Dogs by Sam Peckinpah. This is a really great film. Very violent, but really great. Of course, it is a pack and pop film after all, so it is very violent. Dustin Hoffman didn't want to do this movie because he's not a fan of violent films, but he just did it for the money. Next is Kurosawa's Stray Dog, and this is not a samurai film, but this movie takes place in post-war Japan. It's about a detective played by Toshiro Mifune, who lost his gun, or actually his gun has been stolen, and he's trying to find his gun. The Sword of Doom, another Japanese samurai movie. Next up is The Tales of Hoffmann by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Now, believe it or not, this is George A. Romero's favorite film. Yes, the same George A. Romero who did Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. There is a video on YouTube in which George Romero reveals his top 5, of favorite films of all time, and this is his number 1, The Tales of Hoffmann. It also has a video interview with George Romero. And it is not a horror movie, by the way. It is just very beautiful and operatic movie. Next is The Thief of Baghdad. This is the second film version. There's also another silent version of The Thief of Baghdad, which stars Douglas Fairbanks. Now here's a great film, The Third Man by Carol Reed. Wonderful film, and a wonderful DVD set. Of course, it has Orson Welles as Harry Lime. David O. Selznick, the producer of this movie, didn't want to have Orson Welles in the movie because he described him as box office poison. I think he originally wanted Cary Grant for the role of Harry Lime. Next is Traffic by Steven Soderbergh. I've seen that movie in the at the movie theaters when it came out in 2000, and it was the only time I saw it. I never saw it again. I mean, I bought the DVD on this one, and I've never even seen it the second time. I should see it the second time. It is a great film. So it's been 10 years ago since I last saw this film, Traffic.